Hey guys, what's going on? Watomarmelon back again, and today I'm bringing you a market watch for September 1st. The ban list just dropped yesterday. Now, I am not a player, so I can only come at this from a collector's point of view. And so I'll talk about specifically Apollousa, which is a card that I've been interested in. But before I get into the market watch, one, I want to say thank you for the support on the previous market watch. It was my first one in 3 months, and people really enjoyed that one. Second, make sure that you subscribe to my new main channel. I will spare you guys the discussion as to why I made a new channel, but that's where I'm posting my monthly updates on my collection and such, so subscribe there. And then third, if you guys are buying anything on eBay or TCG Player, as I'm sure you guys do at some point, make sure to click the links in the description before you make those purchases. Supports me and it doesn't cost you anything. So back to the discussion about Apollousa. So in Rarity Collection 2, they released an alternate art, which I'm a huge fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! Doing alternate arts. I think it's much better than just printing nearly identical copies of cards. For example, if they had just printed the original Apollousa art in Quarter Century Secret Rare, I think it would have just been too similar to the original Starlight, and it wouldn't have been great. So I'm a big fan of these alternate arts. I think that this one actually looks better than the original art, and I think it looks awesome. However, this was just banned, and I almost pulled the trigger a number of times on buying this alternate art, Quarter Century Secret, but I'm not a player, so I didn't know whether it was going to be banned, but I heard some rumblings that people were upset with this card. It was too generic and too frustrating to play against, so I held off until the ban list just to see whether it would get banned, and ultimately it did. And so it has come down, I think, almost $5 in just a day, and it's going down. I'm sure it will continue to go down. You can see if we look at the recent 1 month, there's still some sales. People are picking this thing up, but I imagine that now that the ban list has dropped and people don't need it to play with, there are going to be a number of sellers trying to undercut each other with play sets of it. People who picked up a play set to play with who no longer want the card anymore because it's not playable. And so this is something that I'm going to eye. I think my buy-in price is once it hits $15. If it hits 15, I'll pick up a playset. This is actually something I might try to grade as well. I think it's just an interesting card all around, and even though it won't be playable, I still think it's something that people who play the game, if they're trying to collect or they get into collecting, this is something that might go after. So Apollousa, this is my ban list card. I think it's a lot of fun, and it ties into sort of the theme of today's market watch, which is the Quarter Century Secret Rare. Now, with Rarity Collection and Rarity Collection 2, I think the dynamic of collecting has changed a lot for modern collectors, and I think the Quarter Century Secret Rare is sort of at the focal point of all modern collecting, and the Rarity Collections are the best places to get these Quarter Century Secret Rares because they're so cheap. There's so many different printings of cards, and a lot of them are very cool cards. So one that I have personally been eyeing a bit and hasn't seen really any increase in price, despite the fact that I think it's a reasonably iconic card. I think it's just a good-looking Quarter Century Secret Rare. You can get it for $2 at the current moment. I've picked up one of these, and I think I will pick up a couple more. It's pretty cheap, and I think a very, very cool-looking one. Hasn't really seen any growth. Now, you can contrast that with another popular one, which is Rescue Cat, and this one is actually starting to go above its market price. You can see the market price right here is $267, but the lowest listing is $349. So there's a dollar discrepancy between the market price and the actual lowest listing, which suggests that the supply is drying up a bit. And you can see that there are only 51 listings. Normally that isn't a huge number, but with Rarity Collection, the set was so ordered that this is actually much smaller than I think a lot of the other Quarter Century Secret Rare listings. And so it's starting to dry up, it's starting to increase in price, and for me that's interesting because you look at Rescue Cat, it's not happening for Rescue Rabbit. And so I'm interested in the rabbit, and also the cat's not super expensive right now. I also have this one. Additionally, this one also got an alternate art. Now, I do think the alternate art of this is not as good as the regular art. However, this one's $2. I think there's room for this one to grow for sure because it's an alternate art, and you can only get this, I think it was in Gold series, and people really have soured on the Gold series as a whole. So I think it's a reasonably good quarter century secret, and given how cheap it is, I think it's a pretty decent pickup. Another quarter century secret that I've been eyeing a bit is Silent Magician. I was expecting this to really fall out and then go back up. It has fallen out and it's continued to fall out. However, it's not gone back up, and you can see that the sales rate isn't that great. And so there's not a lot of optimism, I don't think, on my side that this will continue to go up, or it's not continuing to go up, it's continuing to go down. But there's no optimism on my part that in the near term, unless there's a buyout, that there's going to be a stark shift or price increase. I think it's an interesting pickup. I personally believe in the fact that long term there aren't any real competitors with this version of Silent Magician, and I don't expect this to be printed in some super high rarity. There is some alternate art in the OCG, and so we'll see if that somehow ends up as a quarter century secret. I imagine that's going to be like a prismatic secret in a tin, maybe next year, or something like that, maybe in a gold series. I do not think that will compete for this high spot, high rarity with the version out of Rarity Collection 2 that's a quarter century secret. And so at $6.50, this to me is a pretty interesting pickup, and this is one that also I plan to buy a couple in the future, although given the sales rate, I don't think there's any real urgency to pick it up right now. Next up are a couple of cards demonstrating how quarter century secrets out of these rarity collections can really spike in price, because there are a lot fewer of the quarter century secrets than I think people realize. Even though pulling an individual one or pulling a quarter century secret isn't that hard from rarity collection, there are so many of them, so many different quarter century secrets, that pulling an individual one is very difficult. And so with Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, it's one that you can see it was down at around $6.50, and then it spiked up tremendously. There was a huge buyout, 244 sold in a 3-day span, around 350 sold during the entire sort of buyout time. And you can see how the price went very quickly from around $6 to up above 20, and now it really has stabilized. You can see that it has stabilized, and there are still sales over here. These bars represent the sales. You can see that it's still getting sales at around 17.5. So it essentially tripled in value, and it still has a stable price. It's not going down. People still want it, and there aren't many listings. There are 28 listings right now, albeit Gamer's Choice has 11 of them, but they have 1 million of every single modern card, so that's not super surprising. The point being that this is a cautionary tale, and a reason that I like these quarter century secrets and why I'm not too reserved about going in on them, it's because I think a lot of them, there's just a smaller supply than people realize, and also they end up as the high rarity of some pretty interesting cards. Like, this is a Blue Eyes card, right? I think it's great as a quarter century secret. And so if you look at some other, this won't be a Blue Eyes card, but this is another interesting version of Trishula. Now, Trishula has a Starlight Rare. It has an Ultimate Rare. It has that DT Ultra Rare that, arguably is its most iconic printing. Yet it is still, its current lowest listing is around $7, and the market price is only 15 cents below that at $6.83. However, you can see that it went down to around $6.20, and it's starting to go up, and the lowest listing's already above the market price, meaning that it's gained almost $1, and it's probably going to continue to do well, given that you see there are still a large number of sales. And Gamer's Choice again has 1 million of these at $7, but this is a really nice option for Trishula because there's such a huge gap between the secret rare variant and the super high rarity variants in Ultimate, Starlight, and Dual Terminal, right? You're seeing it goes from maybe $5 to 3 figures pretty quickly. This is a nice intermediate copy, and so I think it does have room to grow, where if this was a $15, $20 quarter century secret, would I be super surprised and think that people would not buy it? No, I think that's reasonable. Would this ever be $100? I think that would be absolutely crazy for it to get that high, and so I think there's a clear ceiling on it, but I think the ceiling is higher than $10 for sure. Now back to another Blue Eyes card at a rarity collection. This is why I'm pointing to these Blue Eyes, these very popular cards, because there's going to be demand for them. However, the supply I think is overestimated. There isn't as large of a supply as people think, and so you can see with a card like this where there's just a consistent number of purchases of the card. It's not. There was a little bit of a buyout here, but that's only 17 items versus, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 in that same time period. So it's not a huge buyout. And what you see is that just consistent sales rate leads to spikes in price. The demand is consistent, the supply is fixed, and they're just disappearing off the market. And you can see that the market price of this card went from, at its minimum, below $4. This was a $3.54 card on April 1st. 5 months later, September 1st, it is $9.30, and you can see that the lowest listing is a little bit below that at $7.65, but that's still a pretty sizable jump in market price. Again, this is the high rarity of a Blue Eyes card. Are people going to be willing to spend $20 on such a card? I think the answer is yes. Now, it is mass printed, but I think the ceiling for this is higher than its current market price. Who knows if we'll ever reach that ceiling, but I think that people do enjoy their Blue Eyes cards. They're willing to spend on it, and when you have a high rarity quarter century secret at $7.65, I like that quite a bit. Next up, we have Blue Eyes Alternative. Gamer's Choice again with just an absolute insane supply of these things, 127 of them at $14.50. But this is an interesting one because it has high rarity printings, it has a high rarity modern printing, but the sales rate, again, we can zoom in a bit, it's pretty, steady. There are people buying this card every day. They're in a 3-day time span, it's usually selling something like 8 to 9 of them. That's pretty decent, and there are only 45 listings, albeit Gamer's Choice has an ungodly number of them. But if 3 are selling per day, let's say, 127 copies will eventually disappear. This is a desirable card. If you play Blue Eyes, you need it, and I think that it's the highest rarity accessible version. We can look at some of the other rarities as well, but this just shows you that people really like some of these Blue Eyes, some of these Dark Magicians, some of these popular cards in this quarter century secret rare, and yet the supply, I think, is a bit overestimated. Here is a different version of Blue Eyes Alternative. You can see that actually this supply or the demand for this card is increasing. There are many more sales over the past couple of months than there were a year ago. And part of that is because the market price was $150 then, and now it's about $100. But I think you look at this card, I love ghost rares, and I think people hate on the modern ghost rare way too much, but you can see that there are only 19 of these still here, and some of these are, Korean copies that shouldn't really be counted here. And it's not like Gamer's Choice has 127 of these. And so people are still buying this stuff. People still like it. This is another interesting one, actually, Gamer's Choice right here. I don't know why they have like 50 different shops, but they have 3 copies of this. And so this is all to say that even higher rarity, basically $100 versions are getting bought. And so it's not crazy to me to see people put money in quarter century secret rares that are, $15 for the same card. It does have one other version, and that is the stay-at-home promo. You can see that there are 5 listings of this, with the low listing being $630, and then it quickly becomes a $1,000 card. There are 1,000 of these out there. I don't really think of this as an accessible copy of a card, and so I think the ghost rare is what you really consider as the high rarity, because not many people are going to pick this thing up. Although I do love the stay-at-home promos. I've mentioned them a number of times. I think that these are pretty cool cards, and I have some of them. But the ghost rare, high rarity, $100, people are still buying that. Quarter century secret rare, I think people are still going to buy these things. Next up, we go back to Rarity Collection 1. Again, elemental heroes, maxed heroes, these are just things that people like. And you can see that the number of listings is starting to dwindle at 37. And you can see these, the histogram, the blue bar basically, is showing the sales rate. And people are buying this card. The sales rate is pretty consistent, and even though it spiked, I believe, due to a buyout, or maybe not due to a buyout, but the sales rate is pretty consistent. A card like this, again, there's a huge gap between this and the high rarity version, Ultimate Rare, which was like $500 before this Quarter Century Secret Rare was printed. And so I think there's a lot of room for people to pick up this card. I think it has a higher ceiling than $15. Will it ever reach, well, it has reached higher than 15, but I could see this being, a $30 card and people buying it. Now, will it ever go up to 30? Who knows? But I think it's still interesting and just demonstrates that people really do enjoy some of these Quarter Century secrets. Another one from Rarity Collection 1 that doesn't really have a high sales rate, that is Egyptian God Slime. We can look at the volume of sales on this one. Really not a whole lot. Actually, no, sorry. That is the lightly played data. Let me go to near mint. Yeah, I was going to say that's way too few sales. So you can see here, much steadier growth pattern. You can see that there is still pretty consistent sales rate of this card. It has done okay over the past couple of months, and only 40 listings of this card. If we can try to find Gamer's Choice, they probably have 50 of them. But another card that I think really hits at Duel Monsters era nostalgia, and again is pretty cool. Finally, the last thing I wanted to mention today is Retro Pack. I don't know why this is... 2020 is the copyright, even though it was printed in 2024. That's going to be confusing for a lot of people. But this is a set that you can see how people are really going crazy for some of these cards. I mean, the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon is above market price. I think this might actually be more expensive than the Retro Pack promo version from the original printing. At least it looks more expensive. I don't remember. But I just think people are going a little crazy for this. I think people think that this is more investable than it actually is. Now, I'm sure it's a ton of fun to open, and I love when they print sets that are a ton of fun to open. And if you just want the cards to put in a binder, by all means, spend the money. But if you're trying to hold on to this sealed, I would just put out some cautionary words that Duelist Pack Kaiba First Edition, blew people's socks off. Incredible set. There isn't a whole lot of it out there anymore. But they printed Duelist Pack Kaiba Unlimited for 10 years basically after it was printed, because it was in retail products. And Retro Pack could be the same thing, where it's just continuously printed in retail products for the next 10 years. And these Retro Pack boxes get 10 different reways every year, and there's just unlimited supply of the product. Even though the cards are certainly cool inside of them, it has the old text boxes and such, and foiling, and it looks really cool. I would just say that if you're trying to hold on to this long term, be wary of the fact that in the past, these retail boxes typically are printed over and over and over and over and over again. And so the singles inside, I can't imagine that if these are reprinted as much as something like Duelist Pack Kaiba, will maintain this value. But they're very cool, and I'm a fan of the product now. Originally, I'll admit the fact that I was wrong. I thought this was a terrible printing of a product because it just didn't really need a reprint, I didn't think. But after seeing people get excited about opening it up, I've changed my tune. I think that anything that gets people excited to open up product is cool, and I don't really care about the original Retro Pack. I don't own any of those cards. I've owned some of them in the past, but nothing that was too crazy, and so it doesn't really matter a whole lot to me whether they reprint it or not. And so, if it gets people excited and back into collecting Yu-Gi-Oh!, that's all the better. So hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Subscribe to my old channel. Check out the videos there. Or not old channel, but main channel. It'll be in the description and in the comments as well. It's been your boy Watomarmelon, and peace out.